There's a bit of a shop, so it's not
Usually just recording.
I have a slide deck, so she's gonna throw it up there.
Oh, sorry. Yes, sir.
There we go. You. Thanks for having me, some members, and Jeff Stuck with EPCOR. My position within EPCOR is I'm the vice president of EPCOR's U.S. regulated operations, so that includes utility operations that are regulated by public utility commissions in Arizona and New Mexico. We've had opportunities to make presentations on this issue, and I think it was a little over a year ago, asked if we could come in and take a look at your water utility, provide a condition assessment, and some of our evaluation of the issues that we were recognizing with the utility and the type of plan that we would put together for the utility to address those issues. And so we covered the water system, the wells, the storage, and the disinfection, and we looked at the wastewater system as well, with the lift stations and the collection lines, the facilities that are spread out in the community to collect the wastewater and bring it into the wastewater plants, the plant itself, and the reuse system. And you can see we have an asterisk around the reuse system. That is a critical part. I mean, it's all critical, but hopefully I'll explain that as I make my way through this this slide deck. So if you could go to the next one. So the condition assessment and some of the highlights, and you know, I do want to step back and say we had a work session. I can't recall how long ago it was, 6 months to a year ago. We kind of went really in depth in terms of the condition assessment. So I summarized it for the purposes of this meeting. We do have those details available if anybody wants to take a look at it or take a deeper dive to the slide deck. So we, in the water condition assessment, we looked at the SCADA and electrical components of the system. SCADA in all utility world is an acronym for supervisory control and data acquisition. It's the means in which you monitor the condition of your system remotely. So think about sensors and you have lift stations that are going to fill up with wastewater as it's being collected, and then a pump will turn on to move it to the next stage of the process. And so you set level sensors so it doesn't go too high and overflow and create a sanitary sewer overflow. There's also pressure sensors and a host of things that you can do to kind of keep your eye on what's going on at the utility without having humans walking around and checking things, to and including alarms to tell you of alert issues. So you can respond before they actually become a real issue for the community. Also looking at the electrical equipment, specifically looking at safety issues. So you can see we've got arc flash identified in there. Arc flash is an analysis of electrical panels that tells you if there was an electrical arc, how severe would it be and how much risk would it cause to a human that was standing within a particular distance of that. And it really defines like the type of personal protection equipment that you would wear getting into a type of electrical panel based on the arc flash rating. So we're looking at the SCADA system, the arc flash, looking at safety codes, the NEC and NFPA, National Fire Protection Association standards, National Electric Code standards, just standard things. And you can see where we notice missing rocks and some issues with electrical panels, identification of different energized locations in that equipment. Again, this is some safety focused issues and operationally focused issues. I do want to say, and I think I said this in the last time I had an opportunity to talk to you, folks about this is I do want to point out that this isn't atypical. You guys aren't on it by yourself. These are the types of things that happen, particularly when you're running a utility and if you have limited funds and revenue available, you have to make choices on focus things. And so we were looking at this with a broad stroke of the brush to make sure that we identified everything that we felt was important, and there's a risk analysis that you would go through to determine which ones are your highest priorities as you were going to fix it. So comparing it to the NFPA, the NEC, OSHA safety regulations, we're looking at the flow meters, very important in a water utility, understanding the amount of water that you're pulling out of the ground in case of groundwater system, how much of that water is going to put into the system. So that water, once you put it into the system, should be available for the customers to use. And then you should have a meter measuring the volume of water that the customers are using. There are processes that you can use to track down what we call non-revenue water. So that's the water that goes into the system, should be available to customers to purchase through their use of their meters, but it doesn't make it there. So I'm talking about this in very general terms. I use kind of a comparison and say, if you were making Frosted Flakes and made 100 boxes of Frosted Flakes, paid to make them, and then you took 20 of them and threw them in the trash, you're not going to sell them. You're not going to generate any revenue off that to help reinvest. So that's what that non-revenue water is you want to squeeze that down to as low as you can, get that. It's not going to ever get to zero. It's the nature of a distributed utility and assets, but it can be done pretty easily if you have the means and the knowledge to get it down below 10% pretty regularly. And then the last of the water safety issues was chlorine gas. And so you guys have 1-ton cylinders. That's risky. And I can tell you from our perspective, we're engaged in a process right now of converting any of our sites that are using chlorine gas over to bleach for disinfection purposes. The concept is that we're looking at is if there's an inherently safer technology, we want to use it. Chlorine gas it's effective, but if you have a leak, it's dangerous. And so, and it requires a lot of personal protection equipment if you're going to go in and do any type of maintenance associated with it. So we highlighted that as well. So if you could go to the next slide. So as we were looking through the records and the utility work that's done, where are repairs done? What types of repairs are there? If you have a main break in your distribution system, you can do something as simple as put a clamp on that main break and you just wrap a piece around it, a mechanical piece, tighten it up, and it seals it back up to all the way to replacing a segment of pipe. And knowing what's happening, where that work's occurring, allows you to do a proactive analysis and understand, do I have an area of my system that has pipes that keep leaking? I fixed a leak here and then I went, 200 feet down the road and I fixed another one and 100 and pretty soon you start saying to yourself, how much money are we spending fixing leak by leak by leak? Maybe we should just say, let's just change this segment out. So that's what those records are helpful for. As we were going through that, there were some records available and some that weren't, but that's really key to allowing you to kind of shift from a reactive approach to managing your utility to a proactive approach. Asset management system, I did not see one. Asset management systems are essentially computer-based programs, algorithms where you can, if you buy a motor from a manufacturer, they're going to give you the motor. That motor may drive a pump that's moving water in your system. But it needs to be lubed, it needs to have the oil changed at certain levels, much like a car. And the asset management system allows you to put that information into the system and automatically generate work orders so you don't miss that maintenance work. And the key benefit of that is your objective is when you're putting these assets in the ground, you want to last for the useful life of that piece of equipment. So you want to make sure you're on top of the maintenance and taking care of that. I mentioned water loss tracking and measuring water loss. There were some issues with production meters. Those are the meters that we say are measuring the volume of water you're putting into the system, and then customer meters as well. And so it makes it very hard to really quantify how much water is being lost in the system. I said you can, with some really focused and directed effort, you can pretty easily bring that down below 10%. But I've encountered systems where 40 to 50% of the water is being lost. It's a lot of money you're paying in electrical costs to pull the water out of the ground and put it in the system that is never being recovered in through the rates for the customers that are using it. So if you could hit the next one, please. Thank you. So for the wastewater system, we were looking at the lift stations and noticed that there were a number of repairs that were going to be. Those are the big, kind of think of it as a case on the wastewater flows in, like I was saying, it fills up, pumps start pumping when it reaches a particular level to move it along through the process to ultimately get it to the plant. Discharge piping, there were some issues with that where it was there were some failure points and the conditions were deteriorating. Covers on the lift station, safety issue. I think we all have these distributed facilities around and you put a fence around them and that kind of thing, but it's kids are kids and that's kind of a challenge and you don't want somebody being able to climb the fence and maybe fall into the vault. And so we would notice the lift station covers needed some repairs and then missing pump installations. And so typically when you're I'm going to focus on the lift stations for purposes of this discussion, but this is applicable in other areas. But if you have that lift station, you have a pump that needs to pump the wastewater and keep it moving through the process. You typically have two of them in there. So when one fails, you can turn the other one on and then you can pull the failed one out and get it repaired, but the system keeps working. So you don't have any disruption, any type of sanitary sewer overflows or things of that nature. We were not able to locate very much in terms of records in collection system maintenance. And so those are all the networks of pipes you have throughout your community. When people flush their toilet, it starts making its way through there. Looking at jetting and cleaning, inspections and repairs, a lot of lingo that we use in the industry. The restaurants, you guys have them, everywhere has them. And if you're not staying on top of the inspections and the cleaning, people will put grease down the drain and it congeals in the collection lines and it creates a blockage and then the wastewater can't flow the way it's supposed to flow through the system. And so jetting's a process that you just take high pressure water and knock that stuff out and vac it out with a vector truck. So you get the system back to normal operation. And then inspections, devices that you put down in there with the camera and this little car that drives down a length of the collection line and you can look and you can see, do we have roots growing in through the pipe in the collection line or any blockages or things of that nature. And so those are all tools you use to make sure, number one, you don't have emergency issues, but number two, assess the condition and start planning for repair and replacement. And then our last bullet that all of these things kind of combine to increasing the likelihood of some type of failure. So next slide, please. Okay, so the asterisk on the reuse system, when we were inspecting the wastewater plant, we were seeing that it can't the class 1A standards, and so that's critical. I'm based in Arizona. We're short on water, just like you guys are in this area. It's really important that we maximize every drop of water that we use. And one of the ways that you do that, and you can do it very effectively, is through reclaimed water. Water in parks, open areas, that type of thing, that you take those off of the potable system and leave that good water, the potable water, available to customers. And I shouldn't have said good water. If I could rewind, I wouldn't have said that. Use the potable water for the potable system, the reclaimed water, you're hitting that 1A class. It's totally safe for full body contact. So it's more than suitable for watering parks, fields, football fields across the street. You could water it with that. Golf courses, all sorts of things, and that really takes the demand off of the potable system. So we saw significant repairs and upgrades that were going to be necessary to bring that plant back up to a 1A standard. So we listed influent pump station. So that's another lingo term for us. If that's the point at the plant where all of the wastewater flow comes in, and it goes into a big, I would call it a holding cell, if you will. The key to wastewater treatment is it's a biological process. And so you want a steady, even flow of the wastewater going through the plant at all times. But unfortunately, we as people are not steady in our use of the system. People are using the system, the wastewater is being discharged in the morning, and everybody's getting ready to go to work, and a lot of it is being done in the evenings. So you have these peak flows. We typically see referred to as a diurnal curve of demands. Big in the morning, drops down in the middle of the day, big in the evening, drops down again. And you want that, all of that period of time going through the wastewater plant at a steady pace. So the biology has a chance to do its job in converting the ammonia, reducing the nitrates in the wastewater process. And so some of the repairs that we saw were the influent pump station, air piping. Air is key to a biological process. You're manipulating microorganisms by giving them a certain amount of air so that they will actually use that oxygen and start breaking down carbon. And then you want to essentially starve them of oxygen so that they're consuming the oxygen of the waste molecules. And you're kind of playing this game where managing that biological process, so you traits you reduce those. So it is key to that. Those are the devices that are putting the air in pipes. So you don't want leaky air pipes. In a wastewater plant, you have what we call diffusers, and so you might have a big thing like the pool across the street, and across the bottom might have 300 diffusers that are bubbling up to help you manage that oxygen balance that you're looking for. Grid screens are the components that take out the inert material coming in. Somebody grinds up eggshells in their garbage disposal, it goes down the drain. That stuff's not going to get processed in the biological process. So you want that at the front end. That's what the grit screens do. Sludge presses, the waste that comes out of there, that biology is growing, and you start wasting off some of that biology in the treatment process. But then there's a disposal issue with that because it's still laden pretty much with water. So you want to press it to dewater it, make it cheaper, easier, and better to handle. The system, as I mentioned before, it's in need of repair. It needs to be reactivated. That's our opinion. That would be a priority for us. Then you can see we listed some of the repairs that we noticed that would be needed for the system. So we need to address the wastewater plant and the reuse system collectively to really make that a valuable resource for the community. So next slide, please. So we went through looking at a 10-year capital plan. These are some of the costs that we identified. And these are big dollars. So I recognize that. But our objective was to take a look at these things and kind of give you our view of experience. We run utilities that serve over 1 million people between Arizona and New Mexico. And so costs that we see when we're encountering these types of works. Water improvements, $12.5 million, water treatment improvements, $500,000. And I imagine some of these costs have actually gone up. It's a crazy environment that we're in right now for physical plant construction and equipment. The water loss, that's addressing the mains and the services and the water services to the houses. The fire hydrants and the meters, $6.5 million. Sewer lift station improvements, $1 million. Collections, that's the lines themselves, $4.5 million, and then wastewater treatment plant improvements, to get it back to class money, $6.1 million. Next slide, please. So we took a look at all of this stuff. We put it all together. What would the work look like? Should the city have any interest or desire for EPCOR to become operator of the water and wastewater utility, and see what acquisition would look like? It's problematic based on our analysis from our opinion. What we were seeing in terms of the financial models for the debt we need to take on to make these types of investments that I talked about, that it would result in rate increases that we viewed as pretty significant for the community. Significant, and I want to give some perspective to that. We were looking at between 15 and 20% rate increases consecutively for 5 consecutive years. And so that's big. And those are things that, this is just our analysis. And we want to provide this information to you so the community have a better idea on what the community can stand and tolerate in terms of those things. But this is what our view was. There's another factor that complicates this, and that's the FA loans. And so they have clauses in them that would the private who assume those. So that's debt that is already in place that we would essentially have to pay off and really go find secure some debt out in the capital markets to replace that, but that comes due immediately under a private company. I don't know whether there are options or opportunities or avenues to affect that condition on those particular sources of funds and debt that the city has right now. That would certainly change the dynamic of the analysis that we put together. So I talked about the rate increases, and the implementation of the capital plan is really critical in our eyes to optimize all the systems and address some of the issues. So next slide, please. So with that, I wanted to open it up for discussion. I'll do my best to answer any questions anybody has. And again, I do have a detailed list on the capital plan that we put together. We are happy to share that with you guys, and you can take that and give it to anybody else you want and get their opinion on it. I'm not concerned about any of that. People make different types of decisions, and that's okay. So maybe ours isn't the best way, but it is the way that we would approach this. If we were going to take the system over, assume operations of the system, and then additionally, I would say that the street close. So took me 25 minutes, but it should be 15, I think, and we can make it. But we're at the street, and we have a lot of expertise in the business, and we're looking to close in around your fences. If there are things that we can do, short of being the people that operate your utility, we're happy to help. We're happy to talk with you guys. We're happy to work with staff, bring them up to speed on new technologies, new strategies, that type of thing. I want you guys to know we be a resource regardless of what the outcome is of any of this analysis. So I'll stop talking and take any questions anybody might have.
I think at one point, open if I'm correct, you had visited a little about maybe just working on the wastewater treatment plant together, not the whole system. Is that something that's kind of been discussed, or you want to just something like your
I think I did throw that at Jeff during one of our email conversations. He had made the point that we were going to be looking at some significant increases in our rates and everything. So, you know, we've had some other options come up in that time period that we've been in discussion, and our CEC has given us some options. We've got the Ute Reservoir pipeline that's still in the works and still moving forward, but that's, 5 years out.
Yes.
So, and, keep my fingers crossed that the feds keep funding us and keep going and moving forward on this because it's critical to us.
Yep.
But who knows what lies in the future? So we've got to have something in the balance just in case things fall through. We've got shovel ready projects and even we started on those projects and trying to secure a reserve for our community. And so, the increases, I think we're going to see that regardless, whether we use it or whether we do it or whether we turn it over to a private entity or whether we have a partnership with a co-op that's here in town. I think we're still going to see increases regardless of this. There's just a lot of cost involved in all of this and we can't continue to use what we've got currently and expect it to last until we get some help. So, we've got to look at all the options. And, you and I and Daniel have all been on emails back and forth and talking and discussing, trying to keep this thing live and y'all were our first option whenever we were kind of getting in some critical areas. Wanted to bring you in and you assess, and you did, and we appreciate the fact that you guys were willing to come in and do that. It wasn't cheap for you guys to send personnel here, fly them in, do all this work and for the charts. On the possibility that we might be able to work something out. So, this meeting was to kind of just discuss and make sure that we weren't leaving something on the table. And I know y'all have presented if we're going to have increases, but like I said, I think whoever said we're going to have those increases. So, and this is not a formal meeting. I mean, everybody's here. It's a workshop. We're available for questions. Anybody who's got ideas, speak up, throw them out there. Let's be courteous to each other and not talk over each other and ask to speak and all of that. But I think we just open it up, and if anybody's got questions, maybe Jeff can answer those.
Well, for me personally, I would like to see us try to work some way out with these guys to work on the wastewater treatment plant. I feel like we're already started on something with putting new SCADA meters in. We have some options on the table for water. This additional source for water, so I think we're moving in the right direction there, but our wastewater treatment plant's just set at this point. It's now inoperable, can't use it. So to me, that was mission critical. That's where I would like to see us focus and see what they could do for us in that area.
So in other words, back to your initial question, could that be a possibility for EPCOR just to handle the wastewater? And I know you mentioned that you had some financial models and they didn't look good for assuming the whole oil field and taking over the water system, but have you done that just specifically for the wastewater?
We haven't, but that is not something that is impossible. I mean, we could do that. We could carve that piece off. I think the wastewater plant does have some of the debt associated with it, and so we would need to factor that in. But if you're interested, we'd be happy. That's not a big lift for us to do that. We've already put everything together. Now it's just kind of taking some of the pieces off and rerunning. So yeah, we could easily do that.
just saying, I know one of the questions that we had last time was if you were to take over the full system, our employees. The water employees, you know, there's some that were, we talked about that last time, there's some that are really close to retirement. You guys were going to look to see if that was something that we could do, like a split employee to where they, I mean, they're close to retirement, we have to keep those employees.
Yeah.
And ensure that all of the years of service that they have put into our community don't go by the wayside just because we decide to switch.
Yeah, I recall that and I have to believe there's a solution there. I can tell you in terms of my time with EPCOR, I've been involved in, I believe it's 7 acquisitions now. Not a single one of them have we ever gone in and not absorbed the existing staff. But that issue, I think, I have to believe we'd be able to figure something out because, yeah, you don't want to, somebody's at year 18 and they're pushing towards 20 for a pension and the rug gets pulled out from under them, but I think that would be solvable.
Does anybody in the audience have any questions?
Would those employees be moved over to a different department? In Charles?
Our concern, or at least my concern at the point we talked about it last time would be, there are probably positions open that they could fill, but we don't want somebody to switch. After 18 years of working here, all of a sudden now you're a garbage truck.
Employees who had an op.
Yeah.
You know, we want them to be able to continue to do what they.
But we've also invested in their certifications.
Yeah.
And all of that, so, they would probably, you know, I mean,
Some of the higher.
wages would probably be, you know, different, but they have those certifications, they can come in at a water 4 certification 4, whatever it is, we have some of those. That's where that comes
But
from,
I think some of it could be, if it was so true.
yeah, but there, I'm sure we have lots of openings on Schmidt.
We have less openings at the minute, yeah.
Yeah, less than we've been in the moment.
I think one thing that would be nice if they did the water treatment plant is still include some sort of training for our people, because they're talking about the training on new technology. If we could get everyone up to speed, that would only help us have a whole too.
Yeah, and like I said, we're happy to do that. And your neighbors in Texaco have a wastewater lagoon system, which can't find those very often. But if you look at EPCOR, you can find them because we have one from a recent utility that we acquired in Arizona. They don't get approved anymore by the regulatory agencies. So that technology sold, but we put our team out because we had a unique expertise and showed them, here's how you manage the process. Here's the testing that you do to tell you, is it working? Is it not? What adjustments do I need to make? That's the information that regardless of the outcome of what you guys have, we are members and so we're here to provide whatever assistance we can.
So we're like 7 years into paying for that effluent water plant at about 1.3 million a year, and you would have to take that loan over if you were to take on the management of the wastewater plant.
You have to pay it off and
And correct.
reassume the debt, you'd have to secure debt from another.
Exactly.
source.
Yep.
So is it not an option for us to actually get grants from the state to straighten that mess out? To where we wouldn't, no offense, but so we wouldn't have to pay EPCOR the financial part of straightening out part of that wastewater treatment plant? Couldn't we get some help from the state? This was the most expensive wastewater project in New Mexico history. And now it's turned into the biggest joke in New Mexico history. So I think they would be willing to help us. And are you guys not banned, but restricted from receiving state funds? I was thinking that you had gotten some state funds.
I would need to look into the details, so you're not wrong. Recently received some state funding in the Clovis system for PFAS treatment, but the condition of that was only to allow us to make pilot project out of it, not a full-scale project. And so what we proposed back to the NMFA was, do you have a size restriction on the pilot? Because we think we could create what we would, in the engineering world, you would call standard details. Kind of plug and play, you know, and so they were open to that, but there are some restrictions on us accessing that.
For us. Requesting that to pay it off, knowing that we are going to. Move forward.
Yep. And I'm not familiar enough if the NMFA or anybody else has the ability to modify the terms of that, you know, I can speak from Arizona's perspective. I know we have a constitutional restriction called the gift clause. So you can't take public money and give it to a private entity. It's considered a gift. I don't know whether a similar construct exists here in New Mexico. I imagine it does. But that's just, those are things that would need to be worked through.
Just a curiosity to clear up, when we're talking about repaying funds that we've gotten from the state, NMFA or whoever, if those are grant loans, if the private entity takes it over, we have to pay back the grant as well as the loan, right?
I don't know what you would the grant. I was talking the loans, and so those loans are typically very low interest loans, and as was said, we would have to retire those on day one, the NMFA, and then we would have to go issue excess debt on the capital market. And I can promise you, it probably wouldn't be at the rates that they're offering you. So that debt's going to cost more.
I understand what you're telling me. It's just at one time I had understood we had to pay back the grant as well as the loan on monies we received. And I just wanted to be clear if it's true or not.
I don't know the answer to that off the top of my head. Unfortunately, my colleague Daniel Baird, I think you guys, I think he would have the answer. Unfortunately, he's in Phoenix, so that's a question I can ask him.
If it's a grant and a loan, that's a tremendous difference.
Yep.
Yes,
But I
sir.
mean, we're gonna have to repay that one.
Not the grant though. We don't have to pay back the loan, not the grant portion of it.
Sure.
Yeah.
As a city,
But we're paying.
which could be from 10% to 100% repayment. That's the reason I'm asking.
Yes, sir.
I was wondering, has EPCOR been in a situation before where, for instance, Portales produces and supplies its own water, but the city is also considering bringing in an outside supplier of water? Would you be able to work with that third party as far as managing the overall water system?
Well, if there was another entity running the water, whether it was the city or another entity, and EPCOR are involved in the wastewater, there's a pretty clear demarcation.
No, I mean for the freshwater side. I mean, if Roosevelt County Electric Co-op is pumping water and sending it to Portales as a supplemental supply, would your company be able to work in conjunction with them to manage the overall system, both fresh and wastewater?
Yeah, there's if I'm understanding what you're saying, there's a construct under the Safe Drinking Water Act. It's like a consecutive system. They would be just providing the water, and then the rest of the utility, there would be a line. It's typically we have those agreements in places, and we say at this point, anything upstream of that is ours, and anything downstream of that is yours, and that's kind of how we would handle it. Yep.
Yes, sir.
I was just gonna address part of what Steve said, but I think that 1.3 million a year is strictly a loan. I've got a copy of that entire
entire document from the state. And it's, that part of it's a loan.
That part of the loan, I understand that,
Okay,
but at one point I had understood if we had accepted a grant,
yes,
say a 90-10, we
yes,
pay back the loan, which is what you're talking about.
yes.
But if we sell it to a private entity, we would pay back all of it.
Okay.
And that's what I'm curious about. I'm just not clear if that's true or not.
Yeah.
But it would be a significant difference.
So I have a question, and basically, in recap. The city of Portales is at this stage, so if we were to say, okay, we're gonna go with EPCOR, we're gonna turn it over to EPCOR, basically, we're turning everything over to you. So then we would be basically in the back seat. You would have to like pay all the loans off, do all this stuff, and you said increase. I think percentage for 15% for 5
into 20%. Our estimate was
Years.
for 5 consecutive years.
Basically, we would just say, okay, whatever you're going to do, you need to do. So we would basically have, say so. So basically, we would be just going to what you are recommending, what your analysis is showing us, and what they would be the business. You would be the business owner.
That's correct, with the addition of the way that would happen is we would figure out whatever the transaction is, typically an asset acquisition, we require all the assets. And then we would go to the PRC and they would have to designate this area as a certificate of convenience and necessity. And then we would be regulated by the PRC. So it wouldn't be as if we were a non-regulated private entity. We then now we're under the regulation of the PRC that's looking at what are you doing, how much money are you investing, is it prudent, are you guys going way out where the trains don't run and throwing money everywhere we can't. It's not like we're unbridled in doing that. This would just be under the PRC.
Any increase you guys make in this given year has to be approved by the PRC,
It absolutely does, yes.
just like the electrical ones, right?
Yeah. Yeah, and they have a public process for the communities to engage and talk.
So basically, each year on that 5 years, you've got to make a request to PRC to increase your rate by that.
Yep.
And then,
Approve twice.
That's right,
and just, oh boy.
yes.
So you would get your basically orders from them. You would pass them to us approval. We would pass it to our citizens. But basically, do you know what I'm saying? Or, I mean, like, are we completely out?
Big building.
They would get a court bill.
It would just.
Yep. Yep. So where we do this in other areas, I mean, the road in Clovis, regulated by the PRC. So Mayor Morse he doesn't have any oversight over us. But the PRC does, but we meet regularly with the elected officials in the communities that we operate in because it doesn't work if you don't do that. If we're sitting out there and saying we're regulated by the PRC, you guys don't bother us. We typically tell people, like Scott, in these situations, we're your utility department. So when a customer one of your citizens calls you and complains about the water taste bad or whatever, you're calling us instead of your utility department, and we need to be responding to it.
Basically over the radio from Clovis, you can water this time, you can do this, you can do this, and it's from EPCOR rather than the city of Clovis.
That's right.
So it's coming directly.
That's correct. Yep.
Doesn't that exceed that if you were to increase it 20% per year, 5 years, doesn't that exceed what the PRC would allow in yearly increases?
I'm not aware that they have a cap. I mean, those were the increases. So we have a financial model, and so we're plugging in, here's how much debt, here's the capital investment, here's the revenue that's required out of the utility in order to provide that debt service and allow for access to capital for continued investment.
There's no doubt that amount of money is needed to be invested. I thought there was like a 3% cap on rate increases in New Mexico.
There's a mechanism that I understand for smaller utilities that you can actually, instead of going through a fully executed rate case, you can make a filing. I think it's a 330 or 730 filing, but there is a cap on the percentage of increase associated with that. But once you reach a level of capital associated with the utility, you're no longer eligible for that mechanism.
And I think it's important that we all remember, we're gonna have cost increases no matter what, however we solve this problem. I mean, we cannot continue as we are. And somewhere down the line, it's gonna cost money.
Either it's gonna be screaming at EPCOR, or it's gonna be screaming at the city of Portales, either way.
These increases over a 5-year period. I'm sorry.
No, you go. I can wait. Please.
That's on an aggregate, right? For ease of math, I'm gonna use $5. So the first year, 20%, gonna raise it up $1 to $6. The next year, 20% is gonna be figured on 6.
It's gonna be, it's gonna compound.
So it's gonna yeah.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
So it's gonna be
It
more,
wouldn't double your bill. It wouldn't be just doubling your bill in 5 years. It would be.
if it's at 20%, it'll be more than double. That's what I'm.
Be substantially more, yeah. So a couple of factors. So youth project will come through. I mean, it's really nearly complete actually, as far as laying the pipe and things like that. So 5 years goes by really fast. I mean, that's like a tomorrow project. That's really near-term planning for municipality. What happens when the youth project comes through? We pay a substantial amount for that every year. You pick up that tab? Are we out of that game? One. Second part of the question. What about the county? County buys the water. They pay for water through us and so on. So is the county on board with this, or they need to be involved with this as well?
Yeah, so for the Ute, we're obviously part of that project in Clovis.
Right.
So yeah, we're looking at what 2031 to 2033, I think.
They have a full delivery contract, but 2031.
Yeah.
5 years from now.
We have heard, I don't know whether you have, we've heard that there could be periods of time where they're not able to deliver water over a 10-year window. So we're approaching it in Clovis to make sure that we've got belt and suspenders in place. It's a good project, but there's a lot of pieces that need to come together, and trust me, it's in EPCOR in Arizona, we're investing typically around 150 million a year in capital. So I'm familiar with big projects and the stuff that can happen to them. In terms of the planning and purchase of the water, I'm not sure. I'd need to kind of see the details of that, but essentially, if the county is buying water and it's the source of water for us, then we're end up paying a fee. So whoever that's receiving it ends up paying a fee.
But we might have missed it. Sorry, I don't mean to put you on the spot. It's not my intent. But my question really was not whether you would supply water. We have to pay them a lot of money. So we still pay them. We pay them. So we start buying water services from you, but we pay you, or you pay you, or who pays the?
Yeah, I need to figure that out, but it wouldn't be two people paying for it. So.
Clovis are not paying that.
Not sure.
Fee, or
I'm not sure what that arrangement is.
Yeah, it's
one of the user. The Clovis is one of the users.
Sure.
So.
Yeah, but it's one of our more expensive bills.
Yeah.
So
I don't doubt
I
it.
think at this point, Clovis, the city of Clovis.
Yeah.
So if that project continues and finishes as they project, it could be in the neighborhood of 600 million.
Yeah.
Which means the water authority is going to be obligated for about $60 million. So you would pick that 60 million up and pay for it.
Depending on how that whole arrangement would work, but I think if EPCOR was not a participant in it and Portales was, but we were running the utility here, what I would imagine is there would be some sort of surcharge that would go on the bill so that we could collect that revenue to return it to you for those payments, because I mean, ultimately, it's for the water that's going to the utility.
Yeah, I get, so. No negative feelings here, just curious. Sounds to me like this is
Something to
I do have
into.
until we make any kind of decisions or move forward. I mean, that certainly seems like a large kind of rock in the road. We gotta negotiate before we start talking about, pushing down the line.
Perfect.
I have one question. We heard about the agreement proposed for RCEC supplying water. Would there be any use for that if you guys did take over our water? Would that be something you guys would want? Say you take over the utility for us, would you still want to partner with RCEC in the wells that they're planning on building at their facility that they had envisioned?
Yeah, I'm very, very minorly familiar with that. I know Daniel, my colleagues are more familiar with that, but I mean, ultimately, yeah, the sources of water would need to be things that we would have access to if we were running the utility. So if they were coming from them or from the or wherever else it may be. And the arrangement would be that there's no paying twice for that type of thing, so.
Is there a possibility if going this route and any backlash from the state on Portales for doing anything like this, even if we were asking for money for a strip project or something, could there be any backlash, like I said, well, y'all are doing this, or you're gonna have to do something to hire another company to take over doing the streets, or
Yeah, we won't know that, but I mean,
I've never seen any of that proposed. I've never seen.
but one
Hasn't
thing
been
is,
restricted in any funding from the state for using it.
Yeah.
They've been, hasn't been closed for
Long time,
long.
long time, yeah.
the only thing is, they have been providing us the money for the wastewater. For the water trust board fund. So, that may have a stigmatism to it.
As he's already said, as they took over it
They
would
would
all
have to be
made,
paid off and
the state would have to be
made
made whole,
whole.
so.
Yeah.
As long as the state wasn't losing money, I don't really see how they could really hold it.
Yeah, like a retaliation.
Yeah.
Any other questions?
So what do you see next steps? I mean, there's some, like, we need to deal with that boulder in the road that's got. Put it. Or can we start those talks so we can, get some of these. More details in the numbers, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, next steps is that was one of the next steps that was late to the game, but definitely is important. And I'll talk to Daniel about that, try to figure that out. And then what I heard was maybe peel back the water side and just look at the wastewater through your evaluation model and see what that spits out in terms of projected rate increases. And that's something I'll take away. And I take 30 days, maybe 45 at the most. So I've got to get some of our the financial wizards to do it and let me know the outcome. But yeah, we're happy to do that for you guys. Yep.
I think I remember in your presentation on the wastewater, you were talking somewhere around $500,000 of improvements to get it kind of back up and on. I think that you've seen that same number come back from some other engineering firms, so. It's pretty spot on.
Yes, sir.
I have a question on the fire department side, fire hydrants and the water that's used through it. Who gets billed for that?
Well, billed for the water use, or who's in control of the hydrants?
Well, I would assume.
Do you guys do the maintenance right now on the hydrants?
We used to, but city water.
So, yeah, utility group does.
Yes, as far as. Say, out of Clovis, is there a charge for maintaining those hydrants? My number one question is if we have a fire and we use the water out of the hydrant. I'm sure it's not free coming from a
No, it's not true.
utility.
No, it's. No. We're not charging for water that's used through hydrants for firefighting. We don't do that in any of our other districts. So when I was talking about the water loss, I was talking about that gap between what you put in there and what ultimately non-revenue water. Well, there's a category within that called authorized unbilled consumption, and that's what that is. And so, even the maintenance of flowing the hydrants, or maintenance, but I would say in Arizona, we don't do a whole lot of fire flow testing out of the hydrants. We actually use hydraulic models to demonstrate the flow you're gonna get out of them because the water's so precious, we don't want to lose it now. But yeah.
But we not only have potable freshwater hydrants, we've got reuse hydrants.
Okay.
So even treated water would be the same.
Yes. Yep.
Yeah.
Public emergency, those are,
Right.
yeah, you're not.
Appreciate you guys coming out again. Like I said, I just wanted to make sure we weren't leaving any stone unturned and making sure everybody was aware of our options and let's know.
Yep.
Wade through them, see what was the best direction to go. Keep moving forward.
Can we go ahead and schedule a next meeting so that for the wastewater portion of it and all of the takeaways that you're doing? Is maybe it'll be a little bit easier for the scheduling purposes.
Yeah, I think maybe either early December, mid-November, November may be tight, but we called it early December. I'm sure I could get with Daniel and we could figure out how to get the answers. So, yeah. Great.
Thank you.
I appreciate the time and all the questions, great questions, and so we'll get to work on this next phase.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you. Thank you so much.